Today I have a Christmas classic for you. Today we're going to read A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. This one's retold by Adam McKeown, illustrated by Gerald Kelley. This story is originally about 100 pages long. It's a novella, kind of in between a short story and a novel. And so it's too long for us to read today, but this one's retold for younger readers, and it's got modern illustrations, and so this is really neat. But if you can ever get your hands on original and get to reading that, I highly recommend it. What's really neat about Charles Dickens is that he was one of the first novel writers to have a lot of popularity in his own lifetime. He was like the first superstar celebrity novel writers, and he also one neat thing about him is he wrote a lot about children that were suffering in poverty and things like that, and he really wanted to enact social change, and he was trying to open the eyes of his readers to better the lives of those around him. He used words and literature to change his community and change his world, and I really admire that about him. He's considered the father of modern Christmas. A lot of our traditions that we have in the U.S. and England and part of Europe, we're kind of going out of fashion, and kind of how we celebrate Christmas changes over time. And but a lot of the things he wrote about, like getting together and celebrating with a big feast, exchanging gifts, things like that, were solidified as more of a tradition. And so the first printing of 6,000 copies sold out almost immediately. I think they did 13 more printings that first year. And so it was a very popular book. And so I think we're ready to get started. The end pages are going to show dirty London in the Victorian era. A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, retold for young readers by Adam McKeown and illustrated by Gerald Kelley. Jacob Marley was dead as a doornail. He died on Christmas Eve and nobody noticed. He was not expected at any Christmas parties. He had not invited anyone into his house. He had no friends and cared for nothing but his money. The only person that went to his funeral, although he did not cry a tear, was his business partner, Ebenezer Scrooge. Scrooge! Now he was a hard-hearted, greedy old miser. No winter frost was colder than Scrooge, and no wind blew more bitterly. If he had a heart, it was frozen solid. His hair was white, his lips were blue, and his skin was pale and crackly. He spent his days counting his money, and when each day ended, he walked home to an empty house where he lived as solitary as an oyster. And that's the way he liked it. It was Christmas Eve, 7 years to the day since Marley had died, when Scrooge's nephew Fred bounced into the office of Scrooge and Marley with a loud, "Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas," said Bob Cratchit, Scrooge's clerk, who was shivering at his desk. "Bah!" said Scrooge with a wave of his hand. "Humbug! Christmas is a humbug. Fred, why are you here?" "To invite you to Christmas dinner," Fred replied, "and to ask if you would give something to help the poor." "Help the poor?" said Scrooge with a nasty laugh. "Are there no prisons? Bah to your Merry Christmas. Now get out of my sight, both of you." He sure is grumpy, isn't he? Scrooge left the office and edged his way through the crowds of carolers and party-goers, stopping only once to swing his cane at a boy who got in his way to sing in hopes of a penny. He made his way to his house at the end of a grim, lonely street. It was the saddest, gloomiest house in all of London. He groped through the darkness for his door, but when he came to the step, he was met by an eerie green light. It was the door knocker, The brass lion's head was gone, and in its place, looking out with unblinking eyes, was the face of Jacob Marley. What? Scrooge shuddered and gasped. Marley was dead and had no business staring at him where the door knocker should be. He rubbed his eyes, and the face was gone. Humbug, he muttered as he went inside. Scrooge was normally not afraid of the dark. Darkness was cheap, and he liked it. But on this night he took a candle with him as he climbed the stairs to his bedroom. Once again he chained and bolted the door from the inside. Humbug, he said again, annoyed at being fooled by a trick of the light. But as he was about to blow out the candle, every clock in the house began to chime. There came a sound from deep in the cellar, a heavy chain grinding across the stone floor. Up the cellar steps it came. Boom! Went the cellar door flying open. Then there was a clank and a clump on the stairs to Scrooge's bedroom, coming closer and closer until the sound was right outside his door. The flames in the fireplace leapt up, blinding Scrooge for a moment, and when his eyes cleared, there standing before him was Jacob Marley. "What do you want with me?" cried Scrooge. "You will be haunted," said Marley, "by 3 spirits. The ghost of Christmas past, the ghost of Christmas present, and the ghost of Christmas yet to come. Expect the first when the clock strikes 1. "Bah!" said Scrooge. "You're nothing more than a bad dream." The ghost let out a hideous cry. "Look at my chain!" Scrooge could scarcely keep his eyes off of it. It was made of purses, cash boxes, and money bags, all clasped together with iron locks. I made it in life, link by link and yard by yard, by hoarding money instead of sharing my good fortune. Now I must carry this awful weight forever. Your chain will be even heavier than this one, but you may have time to free yourself." The ghost vanished. Scrooge looked around his room. The house was silent. Humbug, he said, and he blew the candle out. Scrooge awoke in the darkness. Had Marley been a dream? Then he remembered his warning. He should be haunted when the clock strikes 1. He waited. The minutes seemed long, too long. When finally the clock rang and nothing happened, Scrooge let out a laugh. 1:00, he said, and nothing. All's a dream. But then the church bell struck a dull, sad sound, and the bedroom was flooded with light. An old man appeared, the size of a child, with long white hair, but not a wrinkle on his face. In his hand was a sprig of holly. "I am the ghost of Christmas past," he said in a gentle voice. "Past?" "Yes," said the spirit, "your past. Rise and walk with me." What do you think is going to happen next? Let's see. The foggy streets of London were gone, and in their place were farms and fields. They reminded Scrooge of days and hopes and joys long forgotten. "I know this place," said Scrooge. "I was a boy here." Scrooge ran down the country road, passing faces he once knew. "Hello!" he cried, but the figures were only shadows of things that had been, unaware of the visitors from another time. Next he came to a schoolhouse. Scrooge stopped in his tracks. The joy he had felt a moment before was gone. "In there," Scrooge stammered. "Is you," said the spirit, "a child left all alone on Christmas." "No child should be alone on Christmas," Scrooge said, and a tear fell from his eye. "Yesterday a boy sang to me on the street. I wish I would have given him something." The spirit looked at Scrooge tenderly. "Come," he said, "there's another place that you know well." They suddenly found themselves in an office much like Scrooge's, but brighter and warmer and full of people. A gentleman burst through the door where young Scrooge and another man were working. "No more of that tonight, lads," he boomed. "Clear these desks and make way for a party." "Oh, Fezziwig," said Scrooge, "alive again." In came a fiddler, and Scrooge could hardly keep his feet from moving to the music as Fezziwig whirled around the room, stuffing coins in everyone's pocket. "It takes so little of your money to make people happy," said the spirit. Scrooge was ashamed of how stingy he had been with Bob Cratchit. "Spirit," he said, "remove me from this place. I do not wish to see any more." "I cannot. These are your own memories of Christmas, which you cannot forget." As he spoke, Scrooge's bedroom slowly came into focus, and the ghosts flickered away like coals in a fireplace. Scrooge sat in darkness alone by his bed. "Humbug," he growled, then climbed into bed and fell into a deep sleep. What do you think is going to happen next? Do you remember who all is supposed to come? He was supposed to get 3 visitors. There was the ghost of Christmas past, and who else? Let's see what happens. Scrooge awoke in a panic. The room was dark, and he knew the clock was ready to strike 1 again. But nothing happened. Minutes ticked by. Nothing. Scrooge was just about to say "humbug" when his bedroom was bathed in golden light. Shading his eyes, he followed the light to the next room. It was decked from floor to ceiling with ivy, holly, mistletoe, and bright berries. In the midst of it all was a great feast. Roasted turkeys and geese and ham and sausages and puddings and pies, cakes and cookies, apples, oranges, and pears. Sitting on top was a giant of a man draped in a green velvet robe, his chestnut brown hair crowned with a wreath. "I am the ghost of Christmas present," said the spirit. "Come closer and touch my robe." He is big, isn't he? Scrooge did what he was told and found himself flying above the rooftops. Looking down on the streets below, and everywhere there was joy and celebration. Scrooge felt like a fool. There was such happiness on Christmas, even among those who had so little. Why should he, who had so much, be unhappy? They flew past the windows of houses full of people playing games and feasting. In one, Scrooge saw a face he knew. "It's my nephew Fred," he said. "Do you think we could stop here, Spirit?" But they sped to the outskirts of the city, where the poor working people lived. They came to a shabby cottage, too small for the large family sitting down to Christmas Eve dinner. Bob Cratchit came in, and on his shoulders was Tiny Tim, the youngest of his children. He was too weak to walk without a crutch. The Cratchits had saved all year for a fine goose, which came out of the oven golden brown. Before they ate, Cratchit raised his glass. "Let us drink to the health of Mr. Scrooge, to whom we owe this feast." All the children groaned, except for Tiny Tim, who lifted his cup in his frail, trembling hands and said, "God bless us, every one." Slowly the frowns turned into laughter as the feast began. "Spirit," pleaded Scrooge, "is there no help for this family?" "Are there no prisons?" said the spirit. The church bells started to chime, and the ghost began to fade. "If things do not change, the child will die," the spirit said, and the ghost of Christmas present vanished into nothing. Now, we've had 2 come by. How many were coming? There were going to be a total of 3. The ghost of Christmas past, the ghost of Christmas present, and do you remember the 3rd one? Let's find out and see what happens. Soon Scrooge saw the 3rd spirit moving toward him like a mist along the ground. It was silent, shrouded in a deep black robe, with nothing visible but one pale hand. "You are the ghost of Christmas yet to come?" said Scrooge, his voice quivering. "You're going to show me the things that will be?" And the ghost pointed into the blackness. "If you will not speak, then I must follow," said Scrooge. "I do not have much time to undo all the misery that I have caused." The ghost led him to a forgotten graveyard, and a terror gripped Scrooge. "Spirit," he said, "tell me Tiny Tim is not here in this sad place." The phantom said nothing, but merely pointed to a grave, and slowly Scrooge looked at what the ghost was pointing to. It was a rough block of dark stone, and it read, "Ebenezer Scrooge." "No, Spirit, no," cried Scrooge, dropping to his knees. "Why show me these things if I cannot change them? I will change. I will not forget the lessons of Christmas past, present, and future. They will live within me all year long. Tell me I may sponge away the writing on this stone." Scrooge grabbed the spirit's hand, but the black hood collapsed, and the ghost of Christmas yet to come was gone. What's going to happen now? But there in its place was Scrooge's bed. Scrooge was back home, and he still had time to change his life. "I am alive," he cried. "I will wipe away the shadows of what could have been." Church bells chimed as Scrooge threw open the window and shouted to a boy on the street, "What day is it today, my fine fellow?" "Today?" replied the boy, confused. "Why, it's Christmas Day." "Then I haven't missed it," cried Scrooge. He flung fistfuls of money to the boy. "There is a turkey in the market, as big as you. Go and buy it and take it to Bob Cratchit's house." Then he threw more coins to the boy, who ran off like a shot. What a glorious day it was! Scrooge ran down the street, wishing everyone a Merry Christmas, until he got to a home he knew well. "I hope they will forgive me," he said, and he rapped on the door. His nephew opened it, looking very surprised indeed. "I have come for dinner, Fred," said Scrooge, "if you will have me, and to add some money to your collection for the poor." "Of course," said Fred, turning to his guest and shouting, "It's my dear Uncle Scrooge." Scrooge and the family ate and sang and laughed, and when the music began, old Scrooge even danced. The day after Christmas, Scrooge arrived at his office earlier than usual. At 9:15, the door opened quietly, and Bob Cratchit snuck in. "Cratchit, you're late," growled Scrooge, pretending to be angry. "But Christmas is just one day a year," said Cratchit. "Not any more," roared roared the Scrooge. Then his smile broke into a laugh. Cratchit, I am raising your salary, and I'm going to help your family. Now go home to them. You're a good man. For a moment, Cratchit thought Scrooge had lost his mind. Merry Christmas, Bob, said Scrooge with a kindness that could not be mistaken. Scrooge was true to his word. He became a good neighbor, a good citizen, and the dearest friend to Tiny Tim, who grew healthy and strong. And never again did he meet any ghosts. He lived in the spirit of Christmas past, present, and future, every day of his life. And may the same be said of all of us. And so, as Tiny Tim said, God bless us, everyone. Well, I hope you liked that story. It was a little bit long, but I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you liked the message of sharing with others and spending time with family. See you next time.